Dear gentlemen, thank you for being very patient in waiting for this video. I hope you're having a good break this holiday while taking some time to be consistent in your revision and completing your homework. Um, I'll keep this chapter short. My main objective is to kickstart chapter 11 this holiday so that we can finish up the entire chapter much more faster when we resume the term. As you know, our WA1, it's brought forward to week 4 and 5, so there's not much time before our first WA. Just a heads up, what will likely to be tested for WA1 for biology would be the whole of chapter 10, nervous system, chapter 11, infectious diseases in human, and likely the earlier part of chapter 12 on nutrition and transport in plants. So I'll share more information when the term resumes. So let's start on chapter 11, infectious diseases in human. This topic is very relevant and very applicable to our daily life. To those 6 of you who went to Sabah with me, I think you can relate a lot more to this chapter. How we were all down with flu during the trip, including myself, and some learning takeaways that we can have from this episode as well. So let me break down. In chapter 11, we can split this chapter into 3 parts, namely what are infectious diseases, which we will be focusing on in this video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the structure of bacteria and virus. How are they similar yet different as compared to an animal cell? And also learn 2 case study, pneumococcal disease, which results and typically leads to pneumonia, as well as the influenza. And then we'll wrap up the chapter by discussing preventive measures and how to manage infectious diseases, where we will discuss more on the use of antibiotics and vaccine as well. So let's get started on the first part. For this part of this chapter, it's pretty straightforward. By the end of the lesson, you must be able to differentiate between infectious and non-infectious diseases, right? What are the definitions of these 2 diseases? And also you need to know examples of each as well. This is really important. So I would say at least 3 examples of infectious and non-infectious diseases, all right, that I'll be sharing a lot more. And also this part of the chapter, you will be learning about the various transmission method. So over here you can see there are a few that we'll be talking about, from person to person, through airborne, through exchange of bodily fluid, and also through the food and water that we typically consume. So we'll be learning about the different mode of transmission, okay, of infectious diseases. So I'll kickstart this lesson by talking about the very first infectious diseases which affected many of us 5 years ago. So to help us recall what exactly happened and unfold in 2020 when we were hit by coronavirus, let's take a look at this quick video timeline. And as you watch, I would like you to pay attention to the number of cases that increases over time, which you can see at the top right hand corner over here. All right. And then on the top right hand corner, and I also want you to pay attention to what did the government exactly do as we battle with coronavirus back in 2020, as that will help us to understand preventive and management of such pandemic in the last part of the chapter.
A ministerial task force will be formed to deal with the Wuhan virus.
We have confirmed the first case of Wuhan novel coronavirus patients in Singapore.
Singapore has seen its first local transmissions of the coronavirus.
The cluster of 4 cases is linked to Chinese tourists who visited a health product shop.
Today, the task force has deliberated carefully and decided to raise the risk assessment to DORSCON Orange.
Recent panic buying prompted by COVID-19 hasn't put much of a dent in Singapore's national stockpile.
There's no need to stock up with instant noodles or toilet paper.
Case 66 is probably the primary case for the Grace Assembly of God Church cluster.
Singapore has confirmed 10 new cases of COVID-19 infection. 6 are linked to the Safra Jurong cluster.
2 patients in our National Centre for Infectious Diseases have passed away this morning due to complications arising from COVID-19 infection.
Close all bars and entertainment venues like nightclubs, discos, cinemas, theatres and karaoke outlets.
We will therefore impose significantly stricter measures. This is like a circuit breaker.
Of the new cases that were linked to clusters, the majority of them in fact were cases linked to the dormitories.
So we will now take a further step and make it mandatory for everyone to wear masks when they go out.
Singapore has reported a record 1,426 new COVID-19 cases, the first time daily figures have exceeded 1,000. The Health Ministry says the vast majority of the new cases are foreign workers in dormitories.
We will therefore extend the circuit breaker for 4 more weeks beyond the 4th of May until the 1st of June. To our migrant workers, let me emphasize again, we will care for you just like we care for Singaporeans.
The multi-ministry task force will gradually allow more activities to resume. This will be done in phases to reduce the risk of a second wave.
We are now ready to exit the circuit breaker. We now are able to enter into phase 2 after 18th of June 2359.
We have no assurance that the pandemic will be over before this government's term must end next April, and that is why I have decided to hold the general election now.
Singapore will be voting in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We are also putting in place enhanced control measures at these popular places.
Both sides have settled the arrangements on reciprocal green lane.
And I'm happy to report that the team has indeed been able to complete the testing of all workers in the dormitories and will do so by tomorrow, 7th of August.
This year, National Day falls amidst COVID-19. We are not able to celebrate in our usual way.
We will start cautiously and lift the travel restriction for visitors from 2 countries, Brunei and New Zealand.
The availability of Trace Together tokens for those who wish to use it.
Singapore has begun distributing Trace Together tokens to enhance COVID-19 contact tracing.
We have concluded negotiations and will be launching the Singapore-Hong Kong air travel bubble this month.
A 2-week delay is now indefinite as Hong Kong continues to deal with a new wave of COVID-19 infections.
Phase 3 will begin on the 28th of December, so we will end the year with some good news.
Slightly more breathing room across Singapore today as it enters phase 3 of its reopening.
I took the opportunity to have my own jab and now I'm done. 30 minutes, waited, nothing happened.
Co-chairs received their first dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Health Minister Dan Kim Yong and Education Minister Lawrence Wong were inoculated at the Kwong Wai Shui Hospital.
Singapore has started vaccinating its seniors against COVID-19.
Alright, so this is just the first year when we are affected by coronavirus, COVID-19, and as you can see, in a year's time, a total of almost 60,000 people were caught the virus and were positive in their testings. And you can see how many changes, many plans were executed, some had to be delayed, and changes had to be made across the entire year in order to manage before vaccines were approved and we started receiving them in 2021 onwards. So I believe among us, there are many of us who were actually down with COVID-19 back in those couple of years. So let's pause and think. I would like you to write down on your chapter notes, what were some signs and symptoms that you had when you were down with COVID-19? I'll pause it over here and drop a question for you to also share your response with us. For myself, I vividly remember that I gotten COVID-19 in the year 2023 when almost everybody around me have gotten it, and I thought I was completely immune to it until the year 2023. That was the first year in St. Gabe's, and I remembered it was during term 2 at the end of the term. Right, I thought I built immunity to it since it's 2023 and COVID was in a way dying down. I thought I would be out of I'll be clear of it and would never have gotten it, despite my family members and friends getting it. And for me, what was different from the usual flu that I've got was a really severe body ache. And that was accompanied by persistent fever for at least 3 days. And the flu, yeah, the runny nose just kept on going. So apart from this, I'm not too sure what other signs and symptoms you experience. So do share with us in this lesson and pen it down, as it manifests in different ways in different people, despite sharing some of the common signs and symptoms. So at this juncture, I'd like to also put some definition to the word signs and symptoms that are typically used simultaneously, all right, interchangeably as well. But there is a difference between signs and symptoms. All right, so before that, let's start off with the definition of disease. What constitutes as a disease? It's when the body function less effectively and not the usual normal condition. And every disease produces specific sets of signs and symptoms. And what is the main difference between both? A sign of a disease can be observed and can also be measured using thermometer to determine the degree, the severity of fever, and some physical observation such as rashes, coughing, and vomiting are signs of a disease. Whereas for symptoms, it is not visible to the naked eyes, but it can be described or felt by the patient. So typically when you see the doctor, the first question that the doctor would ask is, how are you feeling? Because all this cannot be observed or measured. So some examples are nauseousness, fatigue, headache, are some examples of symptoms. So we got to be really careful when we are discussing about signs and symptoms of any diseases moving forward. So before we move on, I have a little question over here. Are you able to categorize the following diseases and identify some of the common signs and symptoms associated to these diseases? So same thing, I'll pause the video over here and drop a question below. Can you tick all the options that are infectious diseases? I'll give you a bit of time to do so. All right, let me reveal the answer right now. All right, so examples on infectious diseases in the previous list includes influenza caused by a virus, pneumonia caused by a bacteria. Maybe let's just jot that down and review it when we are discussing about bacteria and a virus. So I'm just going to differentiate with a V and a B, right, to indicate virus and bacteria. COVID-19, coronavirus, HIV, AIDS, all right, it's also due to the viral infection, all right, and malaria is also all right. I just confirmed that malaria is not actually caused by a virus, but a parasite instead. Okay, so you can see examples of various types of pathogens that is the cause of infectious diseases. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And the remaining diseases, osteoporosis, is the degeneration of the bone structure. Asthma, like could be due to genetic, and also could be triggered much later in life due to environment and lifestyle changes. Dust allergy, all right, commonly associated to exposure to pollution and change in the environment, as well as diabetic patient, all right, suffering from the diabetes, type 1 genetic, and then type 2 is due to lifestyle. So how do we remember the 3 causes of non-infectious diseases? Behavioral, environment, and hereditary over here. And you can see these three cause in the word behavioral. All right, so typically our lifestyle behaviors affect the chance and risk of us suffering from non-infectious diseases, whereas for infectious diseases, it is typically caused by the presence of pathogen. So how are they different? I think in my previous slide, I've already given clues on the main differences of infectious and non-infectious diseases. Right? First difference, okay, is the method. Right? Method of transmission. Right? All infectious diseases can be spread from one person to another through multiple modes. For example, through the air, okay, bodily fluid, and also through food and water. Okay, can be spread. And whereas non-infectious diseases cannot be spread from one person to another. Okay, but it can be passed down from one generation to another. Okay, so as you can see on the right hand side, what are the factors that results in other examples of non-infectious diseases, including liver cirrhosis. We discussed that before in the chapter on nutrition, digestive system, right? Over excessive alcohol consumption results in the breakdown of the liver, right? Type 2 diabetes due to poor diet, typically high in sugar consumption. And in chapter 6, when we're talking about coronary heart disease, is due to poor diet, high in cholesterol, and also excessive smoking can also result in diseases such as your bronchitis, emphysema, and also lung cancer. And these are good examples that you can also write down as well. Right, as these are relevant examples that you should know for non-infectious diseases. And what is the second main difference? Right, it's the presence of pathogen. Okay, so infectious diseases can be spread from person to person because of the presence of pathogens. And what exactly are pathogens? They are disease-causing organisms, and they are not just limited to virus and bacteria. We also have seen an example of parasitic infectious disease just now, malaria. Right, fungus as well. Your fungal acne, for example, is a kind of acne, okay, that is caused by fungus, bacteria, your pneumococcal, and then virus such as flu, COVID-19, okay, are the results of the presence of pathogen that cause diseases. So just a little example on how pathogen results in influenza. And in this video, you can see why it is recommended to take flu vaccine annually. If you are going on holiday soon and you have not done so, highly recommend for you to do so. And over the years, we have heard different types of influenza, H1N1, H1N2, the Spanish flu, SARS. SARS was many years back caused by another variant of coronavirus, and then COVID-19, that was the most recent one. So why, why are we so prone to suffering from infectious diseases, and in certain years across history we are hit by very severe and damaging one that lead to a pandemic, which is a worldwide epidemic where everyone suffers from it. So let's take a look at this video to understand a little bit more.
Flu viruses are quick change artists. They constantly mutate, and those frequent changes make it hard for our bodies to recognize and fend off the virus. That's why we need a new flu vaccine every year. The outside of influenza A viruses are studded with two proteins called hemagglutinin and neuraminidase. There are many versions of these proteins. The combinations of each H and N give flu its name, like with the common H3N2 and H1N1 viruses that are part of every year's flu vaccine. Hemagglutinin helps the virus attach to cells in the nose, throat, or lungs, key to getting infected. If the immune system recognizes a particular hemagglutinin from either an earlier infection or vaccination, it will produce flu-fighting antibodies to block the virus from latching on. As influenza virus spreads, it gradually undergoes subtle genetic mutations. Eventually, with enough changes, defenses the body built in the past can no longer recognize current strains. That's called antigenic drift, and it's why the flu vaccine gets an annual update. But every so often, influenza undergoes a sudden major genetic change, resulting in a flu strain so different that most people have little or no immunity, like during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. Pandemics can happen if a virus carried by a bird or a pig mixes and swaps genetic material with a typically human strain, infecting people with a novel virus. That's called an antigenic shift. Sometimes an animal strain jumps directly into a human. Global health experts decide the recipe for each year's flu vaccine based on predictions of which strains are most likely to be spreading the following winter, and hope the flu doesn't drift enough that season to spoil the match. Seasonal flu vaccines won't protect people in a pandemic. Now scientists are working to create a universal vaccine that might one day protect against both kinds of flu evolution.
So I hope this video helps you to better understand flu, also typically known as influenza, and it's the virus, the pathogen, it's called influenza virus. So if I think back, right, one mistake I made before the trip was forgetting to take my flu vaccine. So that's something I've learned. And why do we have to take flu vaccine on an annual basis? As you can see, the virus has many different strains. So there are different kinds of proteins that are found on the outer layer of the virus, and it mutates very quickly. So our body may not have the antibodies that can recognize all these proteins on the virus when it enters our body, hence is able to replicate and make many copies of themselves throughout our body. And why are we more prone to get flu at the end of the year? It's due to the seasonal change in the weather and temperature also has an impact on the rate of influenza as well, and it typically peaks during winter. So in Singapore, we typically face a higher rate of influenza in December, from December all the way to February. So do take note of yourself, especially if you are going overseas, to do the necessary precautionary measures, all right, before traveling.
Flu viruses.
So as mentioned, since infectious diseases are caused by pathogen, non-infectious diseases are not. So how does one get non-infectious disease? Number one, inheriting from the previous generation, like type 1 diabetes, for example. Being exposed to environmental factors, air pollution, poor water quality, poor sanitation can also result in people suffering from diseases, and also sometimes it may result in allergy reaction as well. And poor unhealthy lifestyle, which include high fat diet, high sugar diet, and excessive smoking, can also result in diseases such as type 2 diabetes, coronary heart disease, and also respiratory related diseases. So to summarize the first learning point, what is the main difference between an infectious and non-infectious disease? We can branch it into two main factors. Number one is the way it's being spread, the mode of transmission, and also the cause, all right, whether or not it's caused by pathogens. All right, and that wraps up our first learning objective, and we'll be moving on to the second one. So let's pause and think. All right, apart from the few methods that I've mentioned just now, how else can infectious diseases be spread from one person to another? I would like to pause this video over here for you to think a little bit deeper and to share. All right, what are some ways that infectious diseases can be spread among people? Name one example in the question below. So there are 5 main ways of mode of transmission for infectious diseases, which include direct contact, exchange of fluids, contamination of food and water, airborne, and also vector. So what does vector mean? From animal to human transmission. And we have seen examples such as influenza, the avian flu, also known as H5N1, and the swine flu, also known as H1N1 in 2009. So let me go through 3 methods with you. So if I go back to the previous slide, this will be the 3 methods we'll be discussing: exchange of bodily fluid, airborne, and contamination. We'll not be talking much about direct contact and vector. So the 3 main mode of transmission that you need to know are the ones that listed with the ticks. So first, all right, droplets in the air. Like the name suggests, airborne diseases typically spread through coughing and sneezing, right, which results in the production of very tiny respiratory droplets that are capable. All right, our research has shown that a sneeze can travel up to 8 meters, and all these droplets do carry the various pathogens as well. Sometimes droplets also contain respiratory tract secretion. All right, so what is that referring to? It's actually your mucus. Okay, if you're down with flu, you can see the change in the color and the texture of mucus is typically yellow, green in color. It's because of the presence of pathogens, and your body is trying to expel them as much as it can, which result in excessive mucus production to trap all the foreign substances found in your respiratory tract, resulting in the formation of phlegm. And why do we typically cough and sneeze when we are ill? It is also our body's natural response to expel the pathogens. Alright, and then these droplets carrying the pathogens can be breathed in by another person. It also can enter through our eye as well because of the moisture we learned in chapter 10. Alright, can also be spread through that because there are living cells that are found in your eyes, but typically through your nasal passage down your respiratory tract. So this is why when we are ill, we are highly encouraged. It's a must to also put on mask, even though it does not completely eliminate the spread of pathogen, but it can reduce the droplets that is being expelled and spread in the air. What are some airborne diseases? Tuberculosis, it's a bacteria disease that typically affects the lungs and throat. Influenza is a virus infection that targets the nose, throat, and lungs, and also chicken pox, which is a very contagious viral infection that I would like to share a little bit more in my following slide. So some of you here may hear of shingles. And what is the relationship between chickenpox and shingles? Why do people who suffer from chickenpox at an earlier age is more prone to suffering from shingles much later in life? And you know, why shingles is more painful than chickenpox? If you have suffered from chickenpox before, you will know that it's really itchy, and you really gotta resist the temptation to scratch the blister that are pus-filled. And for shingles, if you do ask your older relatives, some may have heard about it, some may have suffered from it, and most commonly they will tell you that it is very, very painful. So why is chickenpox itchy and why is shingle painful? It will be explained in this video.
The burning pain of shingles makes you feel like your skin is on fire.
It's caused by the same virus that causes chickenpox.
Dr. Vandana Bidet says after you've had the chickenpox, the virus can live in your nervous system for years. No one's sure why it reappears, but the thought is if your immune system weakens because of illness or the aging process, the virus can reactivate and travel along your nerves to your skin, causing severe pain and blisters. The pain can happen days before the rash erupts. There's no cure, but medication may lessen symptoms and shorten suffering. A vaccine recommended for people aged 60 and over can help prevent shingles.
We know that it will significantly decrease the risk of getting shingles in these people, and it will also decrease the risk of something called post-herpetic neuralgia, which is this very painful kind of phantom pain almost that's in the region where shingles was, but is after it's already healed.
For the Mayo Clinic News Network, I'm Vivian Williams.
Alright, so you can see some commonality and differences between chickenpox and shingle. Both are caused by the same type of virus, but it infects people differently. I'll show you this breakdown over here. For us in Singapore, we are very thankful that vaccine against the virus has been introduced to us at a young age. It's compulsory for us to take this, but we are not completely shunned away from shingles. As mentioned in the video, it is due to the reactivation of the virus that remains dormant in the body. So what does it mean to be dormant in the body? It means that it did not infect, it did not continue to replicate and infect more body cells. Right, so it just lingers in our body until it's being reactivated. The cause is not specific. There are many factors such as old age, poor immunity that may result in a reactivation of the virus. Even for cancer patients, when they are receiving their chemotherapy that brings down their immune system, they are also prone to suffering from shingles. Alright, typically affects people in the adulthood, right, as compared to childhood. For me, I remembered I gotten chickenpox when I was 4 years old. I was really happy to get it because I didn't have to go to school, and I gotten chickenpox immediately after SARS. SARS was in 2002, 2003, resulting in school closure for a short while, and that allowed me to be in to stay at home for an even longer period of time, thanks to getting chickenpox from my siblings. Okay, Yeah, so this is another examples. And why did I bring this up? Because there is a misunderstanding that people who have not gotten chickenpox is more prone to shingle. That is not right. Okay, people who have gotten chickenpox are actually more prone to shingles at a later age. So how to prevent transmission of airborne diseases? Leave a comment below in the question. I would like you to state one way that we could prevent transmission of airborne diseases. There are many methods. Most important is to wear a surgical mask that has the necessary protection when you are unwell. Always good to stay at home, right, if you are sick, so that you don't spread diseases to other people. And the importance of hygiene and sanitation, washing hands thoroughly, not just washing hand, but washing hand with soap. And there are many others below, right, that are ways that can be considered, all right, when one is down with a airborne infectious diseases. All right, second one, direct person-to-person contact, mainly through the exchange of bodily fluid. It can be spread through a few means. Firstly, through skin. All right, when there is a cut, there's a cut on your skin. Yeah, we are more prone to virus, bacteria, and pathogen entering your bloodstream. It also can be spread through mucosal membrane, which is the moist lining of your nose, mouth, throat, and even your genitals as well, of an infected person when it comes into contact with another person through skin or mucosal membrane. So what are some examples? We all know human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, and in the most advanced stage of HIV, it will become AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. A person with HIV may or may not suffer from AIDS. It may take days, months, or even years for it to evolve into AIDS. Other infectious diseases spread by exchange of bodily fluid include sexually transmitted infection, such as syphilis, gonorrhea, are some examples. And also hepatitis B that can be also transmitted through breastfeeding as well. I think there's always this question lingering at the back of our head. Why is it so difficult to cure HIV as compared to other infectious diseases such as gonorrhea, syphilis, and also airborne ones like influenza? So I think this video nicely captures why is it so difficult for HIV to be cured. It's because of what it infects in our immune system. So let's take a look.
In 2008, something incredible happened. A man was cured of HIV. In over 70 million HIV cases, that was a first, and so far a last. We don't yet understand exactly how he was cured. We can cure people of various diseases, such as malaria and hepatitis C, so why can't we cure HIV? Well, first, let's examine how HIV infects people and progresses into AIDS. HIV spreads through exchanges of bodily fluids. Unprotected sex and contaminated needles are the leading cause of transmission. It fortunately cannot spread through air, water, or casual contact. Individuals of any age, sexual orientation, gender, and race can contract HIV. Once inside the body, HIV infects cells that are part of the immune system. It particularly targets helper T cells, which help defend the body against bacterial and fungal infections. HIV is a retrovirus, which means it can write its genetic code into the genome of infected cells, co-opting them into making more copies of itself. During the first stage of HIV infection, the virus replicates within helper T cells, destroying many of them in the process. During this stage, patients often experience flu-like symptoms, but are typically not yet in mortal danger. However, for a period ranging from a few months to several years, during which time the patient may look and feel completely healthy, the virus continues to replicate and destroy T cells. When T cell counts drop too low, patients are in serious danger of contracting deadly infections that healthy immune systems can normally handle. This stage of HIV infection is known as AIDS. The good news is, there are drugs that are highly effective at managing levels of HIV and preventing T cell counts from getting low enough for the disease to progress to AIDS. With antiretroviral therapy, most HIV-positive people can expect to live long and healthy lives and are much less likely to infect others. However, there are two major catches. One is that HIV-positive patients must keep taking their drugs for the rest of their lives. Without them, the virus can make a deadly comeback. So, how do these drugs work? The most commonly prescribed ones prevent the viral genome from being copied and incorporated into a host cell's DNA. Other drugs prevent the virus from maturing or assembling, causing HIV to be unable to infect new cells in the body. But HIV hides out somewhere our current drugs cannot reach it, inside the DNA of healthy T cells. Most T cells die shortly after being infected with HIV. But in a tiny percentage, the instructions for building more HIV viruses lies dormant, sometimes for years. So even if we could wipe out every HIV virus from an infected person's body, one of those T cells could activate and start spreading the virus again. The other major catch is that not everyone in the world has access to the therapies that could save their lives. In sub-Saharan Africa, which accounts for over 70% of HIV patients worldwide, antiretrovirals reached only about 1 in 3 HIV-positive patients in 2012. There is no easy answer to this problem. A mix of political, economic, and cultural barriers makes effective prevention and treatment difficult. And even in the US, HIV still claims more than 10,000 lives per year. However, there is ample cause for hope. Researchers may be closer than ever to developing a true cure. One research approach involves using a drug to activate all cells harboring the HIV genetic information. This would both destroy those cells and flush the virus out into the open, where our current drugs are effective. Another is looking to use genetic tools to cut the HIV DNA out of cells' genomes altogether. And while one cure out of 70 million cases may seem like terrible odds, one is immeasurably better than zero. We now know that a cure is possible, and that may give us what we need to beat HIV for good.
I hope now you have a better understanding why it is so hard to cure HIV. It's because different viruses attack different parts of our body system, and for HIV, it attacks a very specific group of white blood cells that makes it very difficult for treatments to be innovated, all right, without having the side effects and repercussion of bringing down the immune system. So same thing, one question over here. I would like you to state one way to prevent transmission of diseases that is typically spread through bodily contact and fluid. So what are some ways to lower your risk of developing a sexually transmitted infectious? It includes abstinence from having sexual intercourse, being faithful to one's sex partner, taking vaccination as well. HPV in Singapore, it is now compulsory. Not compulsory, but now in secondary school, all females are offered the HPV jab at a subsidized rate, or if I'm not wrong, free of charge, to increase the awareness and importance of taking the HPV vaccination. It comes in 3 dosage, so ladies, females still have to continue taking the other 2 in the clinics before becoming sexually active. And the use of single-use needle is so important during treatments such as acupuncture, tattooing, and in the medical context as well. And regular health screening is also something that one can do to reduce the risk of suffering from such infection. Last but not least, food and water-borne diseases. Pathogens can often thrive in food and water, as these are environment deemed ideal for pathogens to survive, grow, and reproduce in numbers. This typically happens when food and water is not properly stored and handled, resulting in the transmission of foodborne and waterborne diseases that typically occur in underdeveloped countries due to the poor sanitation and hygiene that they may have. So there are two examples, one for each. For food, that would be salmonella infection, and for water, that would be cholera. Salmonella is a common bacteria disease. You see me highlighting the type of pathogen causing each disease is because that is something that you need to know and be able to differentiate as well. So salmonella is due to bacterial disease, typically affecting the intestinal tract. So as a result, people who are down with salmonella suffer from diarrhea, as that is due to the effect of the intestinal tract being under attack, and typically caused by eating raw and uncooked poultry, meat, and eggs. Some may wonder, in some countries, like Japan, raw egg is used as a dip. Am I prone to salmonella? The question is, you got to be clear of the source of eggs, whether thorough processing has been done before appearing in the restaurant and used as raw egg dip. Cholera, on the other hand, also affects the intestinal tract, and it is also a bacterial disease due to poor sanitation that results in contaminated water, especially in countries when the same source of water is used for multiple purposes. So here's a little animation to understand how salmonella spreads from the farm to the table.
Every year in the United States, more than 1 million people get sick from salmonella. Nearly 400 die. And poultry, the deadliest food Americans eat, is a prime carrier. Salmonella are a group of bacteria that mainly live in the intestines of animals and humans. Most strains don't harm chickens or other creatures, but they sicken humans who eat food contaminated with animal feces. What's worse, some strains of salmonella become antibiotic resistant, making them a nightmare to treat. In one foster farm's outbreak, hospitalization rates were almost twice the norm. So how does salmonella travel from farm to table? When an animal poops, the bacteria ends up on the ground. A worker at the facility may track the bacteria into a barn. The bacteria then can get into the food or water. Whether it's ingested, stepped on, or ruffled into feathers, salmonella has spread. The USDA hasn't banned salmonella on chicken meat, however. It says the bacteria are just too prevalent. In fact, most chickens are already contaminated when they get to the slaughterhouse, and once there, contamination can spread. Several key steps in the poultry slaughter process are high risk for spreading salmonella. One step involves dunking birds into hot water so feathers come off easily. Bacteria get swished into the water. Then, the feathers are plucked off. Water sprayers wash the contaminated feathers away. Another risky step comes when the guts are removed. If the machine isn't set properly, it can rupture the insides and spread bacteria onto other birds, which are processed at a rate of 140 per minute. Even after a series of inspections, rinses, and antimicrobial treatment, salmonella-contaminated chicken can still wind up in your kitchen. The USDA ultimately relies on you to kill salmonella by cooking chicken to 165 degrees. But salmonella can spread in your kitchen before even reaching the frying pan. Anything that touches a contaminated chicken, a cutting board, a knife, a faucet handle, or a fridge shelf can spread the bacteria. So what's the best way to prevent salmonella poisoning? Treat raw chicken meat like hazardous waste when cooking. Clean all cutting surfaces and make sure it's cooked thoroughly.
So what is the equivalent of USDA in Singapore? All right, that would be the Singapore Food Agency. So how do we prevent transmission of food and waterborne diseases? Number one, source of water should be treated thoroughly. Right, rest assured in Singapore, multiple steps have been taken, all right, to treat the water before consumption. Actually, we can drink the water directly from the tap, but this is not something you can do in other countries. Avoid contact between raw and cooked food. I've remembered this one friend of mine at a gathering, Chinese New Year gathering, hot pot. We had hot pot, and my friend's parents prepared 2 pairs of chopsticks for everybody. One just for the raw food and one for the cooked food. I know we don't typically practice this, and we think that dipping our chopsticks into the hot pot and the hot water can kill off all the bacteria lingering on the raw food. But actually, it's wise to differentiate and separate the use of cutlery for raw and cooked food, including the chopping board. Cooking food very thoroughly and consume immediately, and storing them carefully. It's all important steps to prevent food and waterborne diseases. And in Singapore, our SFA is tasked to test all food products that we import in. And as you can see, in just the past few months alone, right, SFA have recalled products that may possibly contain presence of salmonella and other form of bacteria, and contamination of toxic chemical substances, which to Singaporeans, it's a sense of reassurance that the SFA, it's working hard, maintaining a high standard of the food that's being imported. But oftentimes there might be some products that may be affected, and this is where information is being shared through the news media to reach the masses to avoid these products. Alright, we come to the end of 11.1. I'd like you to take the next 15 minutes to try out the checkpoint question before continuing with the video where I will reveal the answers to you. So I suggest you to pause the video right now and try out the question on your own. Alright, first question. Which of the following disease is an example of infectious disease? The answer is D, influenza. Alright, arteriosclerosis, coronary heart disease, and diabetes are all examples of non-infectious disease. Question 2. Which is an example of pathogen? The answer is C, virus. Antigens are actually found, right, on virus. They are actually proteins embedded in the membrane found on virus. We'll learn more about its function in the later half of the chapter. Next, which the following modes are modes by which non-infectious diseases may be caused, except for D, right? Breathing in respiratory droplets. It's a mode of transmission for airborne infectious diseases. Question 4. Diseases such as HIV, hepatitis B, and syphilis can be transmitted through direct exchange of body fluids. Take note, you also need to know how different infectious diseases are being transmitted. And last but not least, discuss the differences between infectious and non-infectious diseases using named example. So there are two demands in this question. Number one is to list down the differences, and number two is to give name examples when discussing about the differences. So I'm expecting to see these two differences being discussed: the mode of transmission, okay, and the cause of disease in your answer together with named examples. And here is one examples for you. First, okay, so I'm going to highlight to show you the difference, what we are expecting. All right, so differences. Okay, I'm going to use read right now. From one person to another person, okay, and then with the name example given in blue. Right, COVID-19 versus coronary heart disease. Same thing for the next acceptable answer. Right, infectious diseases like influenza is caused by, that's the difference, pathogen. Okay, whereas non-infectious diseases like type 2 diabetes can be inherited instead. So you can see how the answers fulfill the demand of the question. That wraps up the entire 11.1. Do also remember to finish your worksheet chapter 10 on nervous system and the eyes, and I will review that when the term resume. Have a great holidays, and I'll see you back in school in January.